off limits, man. Okay, calm down.
What do you say to people who say Jews need a homeland, they need a safe haven, they're going to be at risk, it's going to be, or they also say, Hamas is going to take control and throw gay people off of roofs. I mean, I've heard all of these things from people who are serious.
Those are two different things.
I know, but I'm just running through the different talking points. But yeah, we can do one at a time. Let's talk about the Jewish safety thing first. Yeah,
I don't know. I can process all that, so much garbage at one point. So the way to deal with racism is through teaching tolerance, not through taking a group of people who are subjected to racism and allow them now to become the racists. Best example for that is the fact that the vast majority of Holocaust survivors, the very people who survived this, nightmare of genocide in Europe, did not go to Palestine. Only a very small fraction, and many went back. And I actually, in the process with a friend of mine, making a little documentary about this wonderful Belgian Jew called Jacques Boudet.
Did he die?
No.
No, he's okay.
He's alive.
That's
he's
amazing.
Alive and well, thank God. He's turning 90. And he's adamantly anti-Zionist. Wow. And he was brought as a young man. He was 17 or something. Because the Zionists took all the orphans and just forced them. He didn't want to go. He was in an orphanage, still hoping that perhaps his parents would return, but his parents were taken and killed. And he had no choice. And he said, wait, social workers, he said, I don't want to go. I want to go. I want to go back home. They said, no, you have to go. And then, so he was there in this period of the early 1950s, 49 to 52. And you hear very little about that. And he hated every minute of it. And he said, the way they treated first the Holocaust survivors was horrific. The Zionists treated them like dirt. And because they didn't fight and because it was their fault, because they were not Zionists and so it's almost like, they kind of had it coming. And he couldn't take it and he couldn't stand it and he had to serve in the army and he refused absolutely to serve in the army. And it's interesting, he describes the city of Jaffa, of Majdal, where is now the city of Ashkelon near Gaza. He says the cities were empty. He said, empty ghost towns, these enormous cities, Arabs were gone, everybody was thrown out. And he said, then they sent us to, try to do something to actually managed to work, get some money, buy some, documents and get the hell out. And he's very outspoken. But the story of the Holocaust survivors is that the vast majority did not go because the solution, and he says this too, and of course this is true, the solution for racism is education. It's tolerance. Taking Jews and putting them in Palestine and creating this apartheid regime, of course, is nothing. That is how you create space. Now, I heard conversation here in near Washington, D.C., in Tacoma Park, which is a city near Washington. There was a kind of a Palestine event there, and it was packed. And a great, friend, Palestinian, Tahir Zala from AMP, was on the panel. And at the very end of a very, very kind of, very dramatic and tense event, this old Jewish guy went up to ask a question. Now, the guy lives in America. I don't know if he was born there, but he lives in a very wealthy community, and he's got his children live here, and he has got nothing to do with Palestine. And he asked this Palestinian, Tahir, exactly what you just asked. Don't Jews deserve a place to call their own where they can be safe? Now, are Jews not safe in Tacoma Park? Jews are completely safe here. You know what I mean? Jews have never been, nobody's ever been, And Tahir looks at him and he goes, I got 4 words for you. Not at my expense. And it was a knockout, that was kind of the last moment, the last statement, the last moment of the event. Jews don't feel safe somewhere and they want to leave, they can leave, but you're not going to go somewhere, take somebody else's land and say, well, I have a right to live here because over there I don't feel safe. It's such a, I don't know, it's something so patronizing and unbelievably, I don't know, the sense of this, we have a right to go there because blah, 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 whatever. We might not feel comfortable here, so we want to know that there's a place over there we can go to. I'm sorry, that's not how it works. Black Americans feel safe.
Right.
If people, talk to Black Americans that have a young son, a teenage age son, they're horrified. They're terrified every time, a boy or girl go, are pulled over for a speeding ticket. That's not the issue. That's not the way you resolve racism. Sure, there's racism. There's always racism. And anti-Semitism is part of this racist reality that America exists in. You have to teach tolerance. You deal with it through education, not through settler colonialism. Yeah. So on the other question with Hamas, I don't know. I mean, I think Benjamin Netanyahu killed more people and is responsible for more innocent death than Hamas will in 1,000 years. And to be quite honest, that's another thing that I wrote about in Injustice in my second book. In the 1990s, when Netanyahu was prime minister, actually, the late 90s, there was a lot of civilian deaths. I mean, the suicide bombing, the buses were being blown up. It was horrible. That's when my niece was killed in '97. And Ahmed Yassin, who was the founder and the head of Hamas at the time, was in prison. And the Israelis came to him, the Israeli intelligence, and said, "Would you please ask your people to stop targeting civilians?" And he said, and it's documented, "I will sign an agreement now to stop targeting civilians if both sides agree. If both sides agree, if the Israelis will agree, we will stop, if we all stop targeting civilians." Israelis never came back.
Wow.
Israelis never came back because Palestinians have never had a military. I mean, they've had groups of guerrilla fighters, but they've never had a tank. They've never had a warplane. They've never had a military. So all there is to kill civilians, really. And when Israel bombs Gaza, we talked about that earlier, or when they killed, everywhere else. So the Israelis never came back. So to blame Hamas for being the problem is hypocrisy. I mean, Hamas is a small group, a small political party, a particular movement within a hugely political world of the Palestinian, or the very large and very diverse political world of Palestine, of Palestinians. When Palestine is free, when Palestinians are free to run for office, when Palestinians are released from prison, all the thousands and thousands, many of them are they're all political prisoners, but many of them are political leaders. You'll have Hamas and you'll have communists and you'll have everything in between. And of course, you're going to have, hopefully Netanyahu will be in jail for war crimes, but there'll be others. And then people vote for whoever they want to vote for. But to blame Hamas, say Hamas is the problem,
right,
is outrageous.
The argument being like, it's so much better this way than it would be.
For who?
Yeah.
For who? Who's guaranteeing the safety of Palestinians? They talk about the wall. When they built the wall, they said, "Oh, this is to prevent suicide bombing. This is to prevent, deaths of Israelis." But it didn't prevent Israelis going and killing Palestinians at all. It didn't protect Palestinians from Israeli violence. So what's the point?
Mm.